On our full Appropriations and Revenue Committee meeting. At this time, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll? No response. Senator Caslin? No response. Senator Givens? No response. Senator Kerr? No response. Senator McGarvey?
I am here, present remotely in the district.
Thank you. Senator Meredith? No response. Senator Nemes?
Present in the room.
Thank you. Senator Webb? No response. Senator West? No response. Representative Beckler?
Present in the room.
Thank you. Representative Bentley? No response. Representative Blanton? No response. Representative Bridges? No response. Representative Dossett? No response. Representative Fisher?
Present remotely from the district.
Thank you. Representative Fleming?
Present remotely.
Thank you. Representative Flood? No response. Representative Fugit? No response. Representative Gentry? No response. Representative Hale?
Joining remotely.
Thank you. Representative Hart? No response. Representative Hatton?
Present from my district.
Thank you. Representative Nemes?
Present in the room.
Thank you. Representative Palumbo?
Here in my annex office.
Thank you. Representative Prunty? No response. Representative Raymond?
I'm here from my district.
Thank you. Representative Reed?
Here in the room.
Thank you. Representative Riley?
Present remotely.
Thank you. Representative Santoro? No response. Representative Tipton? No response. Representative Wilner?
Present remotely in district.
Thank you. Chairman McDaniel?
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Petrie?
Present in the committee room.
Very well. Okay, first item.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
please, I came in late. I'm sorry. I want to be recorded as me here.
Oh, we got Representative Meredith. We also are Senator Meredith and Representative Bentley. Forgive me. Very well. If you are online, I would ask everybody keep your microphones on mute unless you have a question or a comment. We will be monitoring the chat room there. First order of business is to approve the minutes from August 4th, 2021.
Motion on the
motion
minutes.
by
Second.
Representative Reed, second by Representative Petrie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. Very well. All right. First up today, we've got Tom Crawford from the Office of Property Valuation remotely. Tom, floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman McDaniel, and hope you and the other committee members are doing well today. I'm here in Spartanburg, South Carolina, on my way to Hilton Head. So anyway, I was asked to provide a discussion of the state real property tax rate calculation, and specifically to provide a detailed explanation of the calculation of the state property tax rate, the factors that most influence a change in the state property tax rate, an explanation on why the state property tax rate remained the same from 2008 through 2020, a history of the assessed valuation for the last 15 years and the percentage of change in assessed valuation for each of those years, and a general history of the state property tax rate. So on the next slide, we'll start with the statute, and you can see it's KRS 132.020. And in subsection 1A, you see that the state rate is set at 31.5 cents per $100 of valuation. And if we could just stop there, this would be the best presentation ever because we'd be done. But unfortunately, we have to keep going to the next part of the statute, subsection 2, and that's on the next slide. And subsection 2 states that notwithstanding subsection 1A of this section, the state rate on real property shall be reduced to compensate for any increase in the aggregate assessed value of real property to the extent that the increase exceeds the preceding year's assessment by more than 4%. Now you can see that there's also some exclusions that we will make adjustments for in the property tax base. The first one is for the assessment of new property. The next one is the assessment from property which is subject to tax increment financing, or TIF. And that's because the revenues, even though they come into the state, they're going to be distributed back out to those various TIF boards. And lastly, there's an exception for property that's been is owned and financed by a governmental agency that's subject to industrial revenue bond financing. By statute, that property is subject to a special rate of 1.5 cents per $100 at the state level. So that's also excluded from the overall state property tax rate. In subsection 3, that just tells us that we have to have at least 75% of the counties certified, or 75% of the assessed value before we can calculate the state rate. On the next slide, subsection 4 talks about if we get more than 4% in a year. If I mess up and estimate the assessed values too low, and we actually get more than a 4% increase, then there's a mechanism per this statute that we would make a special adjustment in the following year's calculation to make sure that over the 2-year period, we don't get more than a 4% increase. And we'll go through that when I go through the actual calculation. And subsection 5 talks about the unmined coal assessments. Those are not included in the state rate calculation, even though they are assessed and taxed as real property. The revenues generated by unmined coal are designated for the Kentucky Heritage Lands Conservation Fund, and also to the Office of Energy Policy. So that's why those are not included in the state rate calculation. On the next slide, there's one other statute that has a minor impact on the state rate and also local rates. This is where we have clerical corrections for any mistakes that were made or any adjustments that need to be made after the tax rolls have been certified in each county. In subsection 2, you'll see that when there's any correction that has been made, then the tax rate may be set in the following year can be adjusted, or we can recover those revenues through the tax rate setting process in the following year. And we'll show you an example of that, but it's a very minor adjustment. Okay, enough of the statutes. Now let's go to the history of the state real property tax rate. And you can remember in the first statute, the tax rate was set at 31.5 cents. You can see in 1978, the state real property tax rate was 31.5 cents. And for a number of years, it was just a straight up comparison of this year's assessments with last year's. And if the assessments went up by more than 4%, then you adjusted the tax rate down to compensate for that assessment increase. And you can see a very steady decrease, in the state rate throughout the years. You see the star on 2002, that's when the adjustment for any TIF property assessments was made. We get to exclude that from the assessment base. And then in 2005, we got to exclude the new property assessments, just like local taxing districts do. Now the state gets the benefit of new property as well. So you can see it still went down for 06, 07, then finally in 2008, it got set at 12.2 cents. And then it stayed at 12.2 cents all the way through 2020. And finally in 2021, it is now down to 11.9 cents. So that's the history. So, but why did it stay at 12.2 cents for all those years? Well, on the next slide, it'll be very self-evident as to why the tax rate did not drop any further for a long time. You can see that real property assessments from 06 to 07 increased by 7.15%, and we had a corresponding rate decrease. Again, in 2008, a real property assessment increase of 5.3% and a corresponding decrease down to the 12.2. And then course, it was the Great Recession that hit in 07 and 08, and real estate values were very stagnant. You can see the growth went down to 2.65%. And then between 2009 and 2010, we just barely eked out any kind of assessment increase, a quarter of a percent. So a long series of assessment years where we were below the 4% increase for real property assessments. In 25, and finally a slow recovery. 2019, we're right at the knocking on the door at 4%, 3.95% for both 2019 and 2020. And then finally in 2021, we had assessment increases of greater than 4%. It actually was over 6% for 2021. And that everybody is, I think, is probably aware of the rapidly appreciating real estate market that we're experiencing this time. So it's not really a surprise to see that 6.8% increase in overall assessments. On the next slide, just a little bonus information just to further document the struggles that real estate market went through during the Great Recession. You can see back in 2006 and 2007, we were in excess of $5 billion in new property. But then it started going down in 2008, and then it really started going down as the economy cratered to well under $1 billion for 2011, 2012, 2013, and now we're seeing a nice increase in new property as well, back to a more healthy level. 2020 was over $4 billion. It did go down this year to about 3.4 billion, but the shortages of lumber, or the high price of lumber, and the shortage of materials, shortage of labor was well documented, and that inhibited the new property for 2021 as well. But it's still a nice growth, but just not as much as in 2020. Okay, on the next slide, the factors that influence the state real property tax rate calculation. By far, the assessment work that is done by each of our property valuation administrators is the biggest factor in the state rate calculation. There are some smaller factors, as I mentioned before. We have the adjustment for new property, but that's also assessed by PVAs. Then the amount of property subject to tax increment financing, and then the amount of revenues foregone due to the corrections made by a PVA. So, but by far, PVA properties assessments account for like 97.5% of the total. And you'll see that on the next slide. For 2021, we had residential, farm, and commercial assessments totaling $297.5 billion. We also have oil and gas property that is centrally assessed by a division of our office. And then we have public service company real estate assessments, and that's yet another division of the office for $6.8 billion. So the grand total estimate of real property assessments for 2021 was $305 billion. And then you can also see the net new property of $3 billion, almost $3.4 billion. That's going to be one of our adjustments that we'll go through in just a minute. On the next slide, here's the listing of Tiff's property assessments that we currently have. That has grown quite a bit over the years. You can see there's range from a really large Louisville Arena Tiff assessment to a very small Tiff in Butchertown. And I will note that in coming years, we have a couple of them coming up, I think, for this year. We have one in Fountains of Palomar in Lexington. The Ashland Plaza redevelopment is also expected to be coming on board for this year. And then I think in 2023, we're going to have a very large TIF, the West End TIF in Louisville. That will be also a factor to consider for the state rate in a couple of years. So next slide, please. We had our $305 billion original number. Then we take off the net new property, the total TIF adjustments, and our estimated 2021 real property assessment upon which we're going to calculate the state rate was $297.3 billion. So on the next slide, and keep that number in mind, by the way, but on the next slide, here's the actual steps that we use to calculate the state real estate rate. And we start with 2020's actual assessment, make the same adjustments that we did for what you just saw for 2021. We take off the new property, take off Tiff, and you have an adjusted assessment base for 2020 of $279 billion. Multiply that by last year's state rate of 12.2 cents, and that gives you a revenue of $340,429,960. Now we compare that with the allowable revenue that we could have gotten, and that was computed last year. So just bear with me on that for just a little bit, and I'll show you how we got there. But last year we calculated the allowable revenue to be $342.2 million. So we did not exceed 4%. So that means that step 8 is going to be 0. We did not get any excess revenue. Remember, we have that provision in the statute that if we go higher than what was allowable, we have to make a special adjustment in the rate calculation so we don't get overall more than 4% over a period of time. But this time we were below that allowable level, so the excess revenue is 0. So then we take the 2020 revenue amount of $340 million times 1.04 just to get a 4% increase. And that gives us $354,047,159. And again, if we'd had excess revenues, we would have taken that off. We would have taken the amount of excess revenues and subtracted that off. But since it's the same, since it was 0, item 9 and item 10 are going to be exactly the same. Now, item 11. We have to adjust for the revenue that was lost because of exonerations or corrections made by PVAs during the year. And they reported to us almost $312 million in exonerations. And that sounds like a large number. But in the overall scheme of things, when you compare that to the actual total real estate assessment, it's almost just a little bit more than 1/10 of 1% of the grand total. So it's not really a whole material amount, but we do go through the process of making that adjustment. So almost 312 million times the state rate of last year of 12.2 comes up, we arrive at a $380,572 that was foregone at the state level because of exonerations or corrections to the tax roll. So we add that 380,000 back up to the $354 million number to come up with the allowable revenue for 2021 of $354,427,731. Now, so that allowable revenue, that process is exactly what we did last year. We had the 2019 numbers, multiply that by 4%, adjusted it for the exonerations that caused some loss of revenue, and came up with that number last year to come up with the $342 million number that was showing as the allowable revenue for 2020. So next year, when we calculate the state rate, we'll use this $354 million number as the allowable revenue for 2021 and compare it to see if we got excess revenue or not then. So the last step is taking that $354 million number for revenue, dividing by the real estate assessment estimate of $297,301,137.46, and that comes out to be 11.92151 cents, and I rounded that to 11.9 cents per $100 for the state rate for 2021. So that, in a nutshell, is the process that we go through to calculate the state rate each year. And that is how we arrived at the 11.9 cents for 2021.
Thank you, Tom. That was simple. Very well. Thank you very much for that presentation. And
You're welcome.
For anybody who was watching, what Tom speaks to is the financial side of running government is complicated. And there's a lot of decades and generations of input into our tax code that mean that ultimately somebody's got to figure it out. And so, Tom, we appreciate your effort to do that and to explain it to us.
Thank you very much.
Representative Tipton, you're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Crawford, I appreciate that. I know it's a complex matter to come to this rate, and you explained it very well. My questions are involved around the estimated 2021 real property assessments, and I've really got two questions, one about the residential assessment, one about the farm assessment. In Kentucky, an individual 65 years or older who has their primary home can claim a homestead exemption. I think it's, my memory's right, 37.5 is about right, is what is taken off. The number that's given, the $192 billion, is that number after that homestead exemption has been removed?
Yes, it is net of those homestead exemptions, and it's up to $40,500 now.
He's right. You're right. You are correct that did increase recently.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
On the farm side, agricultural land, I'm assuming this is net of the agriculture. This is the agricultural assessment, not the fair market assessment.
That is correct. Yes, sir.
And one final question: do you happen to know what our collection percentage is that our sheriffs collect across the state and send to the state?
I don't have a specific number, but I have looked at that before, and I believe it's in the 97.5%, 98% range.
Thank you.
Very well. Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the presentation. My question has to do with the PVA offices and, in general, the processes and the struggles that our PVA offices have had. Do you feel like that it has any significant impact on the revenue related to the assessments? And I know there have been technology issues, there have been personnel issues in PVA offices at the local level. Can you just make a basic statement on that from your experience?
Sure. I would think that eventually all the new property, and that's where the new revenues are coming from, quite frankly, does get on the tax roll, but it may be a year or two later than it maybe should have been added to the tax roll because PVAs just don't have the staff to get out and inspect their counties as like they want to. Now, and you're right, technology has helped. We have better aerial photography that has helped us, but a lot of the smaller counties, they can't afford that. And they have to rely on driving the roads, and sometimes it's pretty remote, and sometimes a little bit scary to go out in these rural areas and try to find the new property. So I think eventually it does get on the tax roll, but there just may be a delay in getting some of that new property on the tax roll.
Very well. Representative Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Tom, I appreciate your testimony. And, you know, we worked hard on this last interim.
Yes,
just wondering if you could maybe explain to A&R, one of the things we're working on addressing, I'm working on the bill, is the dark store theory and what commercial entities are doing to lower their tax rates and how that'll affect us. And then after that, I do have one more question, but.
Okay. Well, as I understand, the dark store theory is these big box retailers are petitioning PVAs or assessors, whatever they're called in each state, to value their property as if they're vacant. And I don't really understand it, but they've had some success in other states where that has caused a tremendous loss in the property tax base in those areas. So much to the fact where states are now enacting laws to prohibit that type of valuation from being considered. And I believe that's what Representative Bridges is referring to. He's working with PVAs to possibly fashion some legislation to prevent that from spreading here in Kentucky. Fortunately, we've had some good local boards and good KBTAs, as far as I know, that have not really allowed that to spread too much in Kentucky. But it is a factor out there, and it has really impacted other jurisdictions outside of Kentucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one more question,
sure,
if you don't mind. The other is you mentioned the flyovers and the the aerial views and everything like that. Would there be a chance of, I understand that the Kentucky Land Department, does flyovers themselves about once a year, or they try to. Sometimes it gets up to about 18 months, but the state is paying for a state flyover of the whole state. And I've talked to some of them in that office to where I know their current flyover does not meet some of the standards of the PBAs, but my understanding is with a few clicks of a button asking for a few more layers and everything, they could. Just wondering if you think that might be able to help out with these smaller PBAs that just simply can't afford those aerial flyovers on the technology side. And I know I think the last I counted, out of 120 states, I think 110 are doing flyovers, maybe not every year, but every other year or every third year or something. But just wondering if what you feel about if there could be a cost savings if I'm for smaller government, but I'm also for efficient government.
Yes.
And with the state paying for a flyover and then these 110 counties paying for their own flyovers, if you might be willing, or Revenue Department be willing to look at that with us so that we could get one cost down and working out an equality between all the PBAs and working out an availability for the smaller PBAs that just don't have the capabilities of doing that.
Correct.
Just your thoughts.
Yes, sir. And we would absolutely love to work with you or anybody else to centralize the flyovers. I know that I'm not familiar with who you're talking about, the land agency, but I know maybe COT has done that. And you're right, they had a flyover contract, and it didn't really meet the specifications of PBAs. They didn't take what we call oblique photographs where you can see the sides of buildings and really get an idea of what's going on the property. But we are in talks with the COT personnel, and I think they're in their last year of a contract. And then when that comes due next year, we would like to work with you and whoever else to get funding for aerial photography that would meet the standards, not only in Robertson County, but in Jefferson County, if that's possible. That would be fantastic. But I know there's a wide range of standards, and maybe what I just said is not possible, but I know we can get a lot closer than where we are now.
I appreciate you, and I'll contact you privately later on. But thank you.
I appreciate that. Looking
And
forward to
thank you,
working
Mr.
with you.
Chair. Thank you.
All right. Very well. Tom, once again, thank you for being with us today. And certainly, if anybody's got any more questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer them offline. And enjoy Hilton Head.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right. So next up, Greg Harkenrider, talk about August CFG estimates. Are you online, Greg?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We got you. Go ahead.
Can you see my slides?
Not yet.
All right, just a second. Are they up now, sir?
You got them. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you for asking the Office of State Budget Director to come and talk about the consensus forecasting process. In odd numbered years, the consensus forecasting group is statutorily required to provide planning estimates in the month of August, preliminary estimates in the month of October, and official estimates, hopefully in the month of December, for your budgeting process in next year. So to that end, the CFG met on August 13th, 2021, and reached a consensus on estimates for fiscal 22 through fiscal 26. There's two more opportunities, as I mentioned, to do the current year and the upcoming biennium. Those will occur in October and December, as I said. And I just wanted to remind everybody that the August planning estimates that I'm going to present today are not an official revision to the estimates that you budgeted to in the 2021 session. The CFG, the current 10-member board, is jointly selected by the Office of State Budget Director and the Legislative Research Commission, and they're entrusted with forecasting the general fund, the road fund, and the tobacco MSA estimates. Straight to the deep end here. This is the spreadsheet that the CFG looks at when coming up with their estimates. I'll concentrate on the bottom row to avoid some of the clutter. The total general fund shows 1 year of history. That was 21, and we grew 10.9%, which we've already reported to the committee on. Fantastic growth that year. In 22 and 23 and 24, the estimates that the CFG came up with were 0.9% in 22, 2.3% in 23, and 3.9% in 24. And for the planning estimates, 25 is 2.7 and 26 was 2.8. The CFG did spend a fair bit of time talking about fiscal 22. We have been a little low on the last couple estimates that the CFG did, and they wanted to make sure that we didn't underestimate again. So we spent a lot of time on individual. We expect that to grow 0.9%, despite 5.9% growth in withholding. The sales and use tax is expected to grow 4.8% off of the big 12% we got last year. And the combined business taxes are expected to decline 14.9%. That's largely a function of House Bill 278 that was passed in the 2021 regular session. That's mainly a legislative issue. You can see that in 24, 25, and 26, we start to get growth again in the business taxes, but in the short run, we won't. The CFG predicted we wouldn't see much growth. The other noteworthy item on fiscal 22 is the other category. You see a negative 7.5% expected growth in the other category. You don't usually see that in other taxes because the other taxes are doing really well right now. That's just a reflection of what happened in the 2019 session when banks were moved away from the bank franchise tax and moved into being taxed as regular corporations. So that cost us about 125 million in fiscal 22 and beyond. And that's why the other falls 7.5%. So how do these estimates compare with historical periods? If you look at I'm using compound annual growth rates. That was a fair statistical method I could come up with. The planning estimates, the compound annual growth rate was 2.5%. And then the current year and the upcoming biennium was 2.4%. If you look at the last 6 years, the compound annual growth rate was 4.3%. So we're predicting a little bit less than the last 6 years. However, the 6th year, 21, was a record-setting year for growth. So if you take that out, the last 5 years minus 21 were 3.0%, which is we're still estimating less revenue than that, but it's a little closer. And then the 11-year compound annual growth rate is 4.1%, and if you take out 21, it's 3.5%. So we have growth, but growth is in the August estimates, at least, growth is projected to be a little bit less than historical growth patterns. Just a few remarks about the CFG process. We did present the CFG with control, optimistic, and pessimistic alternatives. We take the control estimate from our forecasting firm, IHS Markit, and we run them through a state econometric model to get things like Kentucky personal income and Kentucky wages and salaries, which are drivers for our revenue forecast. And typically the pessimistic and optimistic practically set a lower and upper bound for the revenue estimates. In terms of a comparison with officially enacted estimates, the only officially enacted estimate we have is 22. And you guys pushed away from the table in the session at 11,849.8 million. If you took the August planning estimate for the general fund, it's 12,940.5 million, which is an implied revenues in excess of budgeted of 1,090 million. That compares to the 1,123.4 million that we were over in fiscal 21. In the interest of time, I'm going to jump ahead to the road fund. In the road fund, we also concentrated a bit on the bottom line. Last year was a good year, 10.1%. That's the last historical year we have. And then in 22, we're still expecting pretty good growth, 3.9%. That doesn't seem like a lot, but people that follow the road fund would love 3.9% every year. In 23 and 24, we're expecting growth to mitigate a little bit to 1.7 and then a revenue decline in 24 of 0.5%. And then the planning years at 1.4 and 1.4% respectively. They did spend a fair bit of time talking about fiscal 22. I'm going to mainly talk about fuels and usage because that's 84.3% of the road fund. Motor fuels is going to be up 5.7% is the predicted amount for fiscal 22. That may be a head scratcher to some of you because fuels haven't been growing at that rate. 5.7 is actually good growth in fuels, especially since the rate is going to be the same. That's solely a function of consumption. And it seemed high to me when I first looked at it, but 20 and 21 are still affected by the reduced driving from the pandemic. So the last clean year of fuels data we have is fiscal 19, and that was 773.2 million. And we're projecting 790.7, which is a compound annual growth rate of 0.7%. So really, you could look at the 5.7 as 0.7 compound growth since 19. And that's a little bit more in line with what you would expect in the motor fuels tax. On usage, we do expect growth off of that record year last year, the 620.9 million last year. We're still expecting growth off that. We've had growth year to date, and we're expecting growth 647.2 million in the motor vehicle usage account, which would be 4.2% growth. So the big two taxes continue to drive growth in the road fund, and we're expecting 3.9 in the current year. Comparing that to historical periods, the comparison's a little bit more favorable than the general fund. The compound annual growth rate from 22 to 26, which is the full planning period of estimates, is 1.6%. If you just look at the current fiscal year and the upcoming biennium, we're expecting growth of 1.7%. If you look at the 6 years prior to the planning estimates, the compound annual growth rate is only 1.2%. And then if you look back to fiscal 10, the growth rate's a little higher, 2.8%, but we had some years of quickly growing fuel taxes back then because the rate was increasing. I think we peaked in fiscal 14 on the fuels tax. So you're getting some growth in the early part of the decade, which makes the compound annual growth rate 2.8% for the road fund. In terms of comparison to enacted estimates, there were no legislative actions in the road fund. So the enacted estimate was 1,609.2 million. If the August planning estimate was accepted, which it was, the number there is 1,705.6 million, which is an implied revenues in excess of enacted of $96.4 million. The CFG also forecasted the MSA, the tobacco MSA estimates. You can see in the current year, we got 126, I'm sorry, in the prior fiscal year, fiscal 21, we received 126.3 million. The estimate for that year was 106.3, so we exceeded the estimate by $20 million. There was just a confluence of three factors that led to the number being higher than the estimate. We're also expected to be higher than the estimate in fiscal 22. The official estimate is 103.0. The CFG predicted 109.8, so we're looking at a 6.8% revenues in excess of official for 22. And you can see the amounts declining through the rest of the next biennium and the planning period due to just normal volume adjustments, NPM adjustments, and the other adjustments in the MSA that tend to make payments go down. It is noteworthy that we are getting payments past 25. I know when I first started doing the MSA estimates, all the spreadsheets went out to 2025. The MSA goes on into perpetuity. So the payments don't end in 2025, but our early depictions always cut off in 2025. But anyway, you also wanted a quick review of where we stand year to date on receipts. And so I'm going to talk about August and year to date. General fund grew 12.5% in August, which is 10.4% year-to-date growth. Growth has been concentrated on our big three taxes. The individual income tax rose 10.3% in August and is up 5.9% year-to-date, which is coincidentally the growth we've seen in withholding year-to-date. The sales and use tax grew 11.7% and is up 9.4% year-to-date. If you look broader than sales and use and look at sales and gross receipts, which includes the sin taxes like alcohol, tobacco, and parimutuel, as well as the insurance and telecom taxes, those set of accounts grew 12.6%. So the consumption taxes are really building up steam and carrying the general fund a little bit. And finally, the business taxes have grown over 200% year to date. Granted, we expect $700 something odd million in those taxes, and we've only collected 67.9 million year to date, which is about 9% of our annual haul. It's still good to be up by a wide margin, and we're waiting for September receipts to come in to close out the quarter to see how we're doing in the first quarter. In general, that's going to be the main thing that separates the August estimates from the preliminary estimates we do in October. We're going to have a full quarter of data on revenues, and that hopefully will allow us to hone in on the estimates for the current year and the upcoming biennium a little bit more than we had in August. Just a reminder, in fiscal 21, the growth rates did accelerate as the year went. We started off at 5.8, but then dipped to 5.3 and then grew to 6.7 and finished the year at 24.8% growth. So growth accelerated as the year went along. And finally, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to just mention the Kentucky Road Fund. The August receipts were up 5.3% and are up 2.8% year to date. Motor fuels rose 3.3%. That's the largest tax in the road fund, and are up 4.4% year to date. In August, the usage grew 5.8%, and year to date they're up 3.4%. And again, that's over 80% of the road fund. And as a reminder, the pattern from last year is 1.9% in the first quarter, and then soft growth in the middle, 0.7, and negative 0.4 in the third quarter. And then we are coming off the COVID quarter in the fourth quarter, and we grew 43.9%. Before I yield the remainder of my time, I just want to say on the October estimates, the only two changes we're going to have essentially are a quarter of receipts and then an updated economic forecast that will run through our Kentucky econometric model. In August, we used the July national forecast from IHS Market. And in the month of October, we'll be using the September run. The meeting is October 14th at 9 o'clock. And we look forward to updating those estimates at that time. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back to you.
Very well, Greg. Thank you very much. Appreciate the updates on that. It's good to see it. I would be remiss if I didn't remind everyone, though, we see these things. The financial forecasts do well, so on and so forth. We still have the nation's fourth worst funded pension system. So this would be kind of like if your family got a $10,000 bonus at the end of a year, but you had $200,000 in credit card bills sitting there. It's nice to get the $10,000, but you still have a lot of debt that you have to handle. So while this is nice, it's good to see, and growth can fix a lot of ills, we still have a lot of obligations to meet in this state, and I look forward to us meeting them. So, Greg, thank you again for your presentation. Any questions at all? All right, seeing none. Very well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, next up we have Brady Industries and its successor corporations. You gentlemen on the line?
Chairman McDaniel, this is Nate Haney. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Chairman, thank you, and thank the committee. It's good to see so many of you again. We want to thank you for allowing us to join this meeting from Ashland, Kentucky, from our headquarters. We have had to shuffle the deck a little bit today as we have some meetings that have popped up in the interim. But we do have a great team for you today to try to answer any questions you might have and give a brief update as succinctly as we possibly can. I know you guys are very busy, and gals, and we're very honored to be here today. We want to thank you for allowing us to join via Zoom. Our executives today are currently in a meeting with our financial advisors and potential partner. And so when we're not in those meetings, we are supportive of those meetings, and we kind of act as a glorified quick read call team. And so if some of our folks have to pop out or in, please just excuse them. They'll be right back after they answer any types of questions or things of that nature. So thank you so much for that. Today we have a great team for you. I think we are going to kind of just go around the room here and let them introduce themselves to you. We did provide a recent update that we gave to the Commonwealth Seat Capital, which bullet points some fairly high level but significant momentum that we have created over the last year and a half, certainly from the time that we were in front of you last, Mr. Chairman. Things are looking much better. And so we're proud to be here to discuss that with you today. We don't have a presentation today because it's difficult really in this time of financing that we're in, that we started early this year. We're kind of hindered by SEC regulations as well as some mutual confidentiality agreements. So we can't really discuss a lot of the details of our financing, but we can try to provide you some insight on what's going on with our company. We are very encouraged right now. We are cautiously confident. As you know, Chairman and members of the committee, we've had a roller coaster ride over the last couple of years. And so we are really feeling pretty good right now. And we think that we can get this project complete and over the finish line as soon as we can. We do have a short video. The folks at the LRC emailed me earlier and said they were having some difficulty with that video. We're going to play. We would like to play that if we get access to it. But if not, for time, Chairman, obviously this is your meeting, and we're glad to be here with you. So we're glad to do an audible if that's what you want us to do. So I think what we might ought to do is go around the room here briefly. We have 4 folks with me today. This is our manufacturing team. They do everything. They are absolutely world class. They're from all over the country, and they've all moved here to Ashland, Kentucky. Their families and all are here, going to schools in our schools, and they have been tremendous. They're just tremendous team. I think you'll be very impressed by them. Why don't we start with you, Greg? Go to Shane, head over to Chris, and then maybe to Bernardo to round up, and then maybe play the video and move from there.
Great. Thank you, Nate. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Wiggum. I'm a general manager for Unity Aluminum. I've been with this project for a little over three years now. As Nate mentioned, my family and I reside in Ashland. My wife is a registered nurse with King's Daughters Hospitals. I come to Unity with over 30 years of aluminum industry experience. The thing that really attracted me to this project was really the once in a career opportunity to build the first new aluminum rolling mill in the United States in over 50 years. In fact, most of our competitors' mills are over 70 years old, and it's high time there's a new state-of-the-art aluminum rolling mill built in the U.S. There's a tremendous demand for it, and I'm very glad that we're doing this in Ashland, Kentucky. Shane?
Thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Shane Schuler. I am the general manager of finishing of the Unity Aluminum Mill. I too, like Greg, come to Unity with 30 years of experience in the aluminum rolling mill experience. My family and I relocated to the Ashland area. We actually live in Catlettsburg, Kentucky, and have really enjoyed our experience here, and getting an opportunity to build a mill from the ground up, as Greg said, once in a lifetime, and couldn't pass up the opportunity. So enjoyed my Kentucky experience, and look forward to sharing with you what we've got going on. Chris?
Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Dersha. I'm the Director of Quality for Unity Aluminum. I've been with the project just over 3 years. I moved here from Iowa. I've got 2 high school students. I live in Ashland, and both of my kids go to Russell Independent Schools. So we have really made Ashland our home. We love it here. Just like Greg and Shane have already said, I came here really to do something new and different, and right the wrongs of manufacturing in an aluminum mill. So from a quality perspective, I've never had an opportunity to start from the ground up, and it has been so exciting so far, and I'm happy to be here. So thank you for the opportunity. Bernardo,
before you go, I do want to.
My name is Bernardo Bullis. Good afternoon, everybody. I am in charge of the raw materials department here at Unity Aluminum. I have been in the non-ferrous metallurgical industry for 28 years and moved my family from San Francisco to beautiful Flatwoods, Kentucky. And we have been residents here for the past 2.5 years. My daughter just recently graduated from Russell High School, and I still have a high schooler there. And as I said, happy with this of being part of this beautiful, ambitious project in Kentucky. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that's a couple of our folks here as part of our team. Just a tremendous group of people. Bernardo, I meant to warn everybody that he has a very thick Flatwoods, Kentucky accent. So he's wonderful. We've got a great team. We did put together this a brief video, and the reason we did this was when we re-entered the financial markets after COVID had kind of calmed down a little bit towards the end of last year. What we found was that when we were meeting with potential financiers from New York or San Francisco or Austin, Texas, or wherever they may be, we really had a hard time explaining where we were from Appalachia, how this project truly impacted our community and the people around us, which is so important right now in our world, and it should be important, the corporate responsibility and sustainability and impact. And so we put together this little script, wrote the script, and we had a gentleman do a voiceover on it. It's a little scratchy over Zoom. The audio's good, but I think you guys will like it. We've had a lot of good feedback, and it's been very helpful to us in our financing. So, Chris, do you have permission to, on this? Do you need permission?
As long as we have permission from Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, do we have permission to play this 2-minute video, or do you want to pull off?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
This is Appalachia, a land of natural beauty and national resources. These mountains fueled the Industrial Revolution and provided the high-quality coal needed to unleash the production of American steel. Here, men and women of strong shoulders and strong character met every challenge to build prosperity for America, even as that bounty passed them by. 60 years ago, President Lyndon Johnson sat on a porch in Martin County, Kentucky, and declared war on poverty. But the coal mines and steel mills are now closed, and good jobs are scarce. But folks here have always stood together, struggled together, raised families together, overcome together, sometimes against all odds. But we've always done it together, and we will again. Now we're on the verge of a real Appalachian revolution. A new opportunity is dawning that can refuel the entrepreneurial spirit and economy of Appalachia. And once again, it is a time for unity. Unity Aluminum is committed to rekindling the region's economy and will invest over $2.2 billion to create a state-of-the-art aluminum rolling mill in the heart of Appalachia. This will be the largest single investment in Appalachia, Kentucky history. The Unity Aluminum Rolling Mill will also be the greenest, lowest carbon footprint mill in North America and will meet the surging demand for low-cost, high-quality aluminum needed by the global automotive industry for lower weight and more efficient vehicles. No other private project in the U.S. will have the economic impact that Unity Aluminum Mill will have. Economic impact studies predict tens of thousands of jobs for our talented workforce and billions of dollars in investment. Join us as we lead the sustainable manufacturing revolution from the heart of Appalachia. Once again, we can revitalize the American economy together. Unity Aluminum. Together, lighter, stronger, greener.
To what?
Say here.
Nate, hold on 1 second before you go ahead. If there are members on the line, please go ahead and put yourself on mute. Thank you. Go ahead, Nate.
Yes, sir. Chairman, thank you. I just wanted to let you know, thank you for letting us be here today. We're glad to try to answer as many or as few questions as you may have. We're ready to go when you are.
All right, we're going to start with Representative Flood.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Haney, a couple of reflections and a question for a member of your team. Just to state, I want to make sure you knew I perfectly understood every single one of your clients and employees when they spoke, whatever their accent was. And I'm one of the gals here today who wants to make this key question of you and then of your team. The financing that you are doing, when you say that you can't really report today, is there Russian oligarchical funding still involved in this finance structure that you're putting together? And for the second member of your team, naming some of the righting the wrongs in aluminum mill production, I'd love to hear what the key writing that is taking place from her. Thank you so much.
Representative, can you hear me okay? I just want to make sure.
We've got you fine.
Okay, thank you, sir. Great question. First of all, because we signed a mutual confidentiality agreement with Rusal, we don't want to get into a lot of details about the Russian oligarch stuff. However, Rusal did publicly comment that they will not be a part of our financing moving forward. And so we will confirm that report. and let you know that it is true, and we believe it has been a very positive thing for us as we move forward with this new financing. All of the players in this particular final tranche of financing are domestic, and we will not have any further Russian ownership at all in Unity Aluminum as of the financial close. So very good question, and thank you for that. Who would like to answer Representative's second question? Chris?
I would like to, please.
She's the pro. Go for it.
Thank you for the question. I would say in my 24 years of manufacturing, and I've worked in 3 major aluminum competitors of Unity Aluminums, one of the biggest issues I have seen is the lack of involvement of the plant with the customer. And that seems really backwards to me. You're not in business to produce material for yourself. You're always in business to produce material for your customer and ultimately make money for yourself. One of the key things that we as a team brought to this project was knowing and understanding customer needs. We all come in here with more than 20 years of experience, and understanding what the customer desires was key to the design of the mill. And so as an example, we knew that one of our potential customers required or desired an offline inspection of the material. And where we came from, that did not exist easily. And so we designed it in. It was as simple as having a conversation with the customers up front to find out their desires, and then designing what they would like into the mill. And to me, that has been one of the most rewarding pieces of coming to work for a greenfield mill, a brand new mill with no strings attached. It's been really refreshing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Flood. Guys, I've got a couple of questions here. How many employees do you have in Kentucky?
I think we're right around 20, Chairman, but I can get that exact answer. Kirk Carson had a family issue and was not able to be here, but he could answer that directly. But I can get you that information. But I believe it's right at 20 as of today.
So 20, okay. You had a letter on January the 15th of 2021 from Unity Aluminum where you got the terms extended yet again into Q1 of 2022, saying that you anticipated, let's see, I've lost my place here, permanent project financing complete by third quarter of 2021. Being as we are a week away from the end of the third quarter, has that happened?
No, sir, it has not happened. That you are exactly right. That was a goal of ours. Obviously, one of the things that we had changed, Chairman, since last time we had been in front of you and under new leadership, is that rather than bringing incremental financing, we are bringing all the ingredients together at once. And so when there's a few ingredients left out there, we need to wait until
Nate, this honestly sounds like the patient capital line that I heard somebody else utter a couple years ago.
I'm not sure. Well, patient capital would be somebody who would invest and be patient before they needed a return. This is a little different because it's such a big project. We just, the incremental financing stuff that we did previously, Chairman, when we had 2 or 3 fundraising rounds, it didn't get us where we wanted to go. And so we've represented this and repositioned this to the financial markets, and we have had quite a bit of momentum. But no, we have not closed on the financing as of third quarter, and I don't suspect that'll happen in the next 3 days or 4 or however long is left in the third quarter.
Do you anticipate that in March of 2022 you'll have to ask for yet another extension?
I do not.
Okay. Who's the CEO of Unity Aluminum?
Our acting CEO is Terry Gill.
How much is Mr. Gill paid?
Mr. Gill is, I believe, under a contract, but I'm not sure about that here, Mr. Chairman.
Did he have any role in the Bevan administration?
He did. He was the secretary of economic development during a period of time there. Yes, sir.
At the same period that Brady's incentives were approved, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that would probably be the case. Yes, sir.
Okay. In your letter asking for your extension, you note that you've raised $165 million. Let's just cut to the chase. The biggest question that everybody on this committee has: why don't you repay your $15 million to the state and not have to have us continue to ask these questions?
That's a good question, Mr. Chairman. That is not a question I can answer at this time. That's first of all not up to me, and second of all, that is during this financing period something we have to keep confidential. That's a board of director question, and certainly we love to have the state of Kentucky's support in this, and investors have made it very clear that they also want to have Kentucky's support. That may change as we move forward with full financing and we get a majority of the money in. That could change, but that's yet to be seen.
Well, I'll tell you, we're going to have a few more questions here, but I believe one of the worst financial votes I've ever taken was this one. I feel like 2 administrations now and multiple General Assemblies have been played for fools and written down the road. And I think that the patience has largely worn thin. Next question. Do you guys still own the golf course that you purchased in 2019?
No, sir, we didn't purchase a golf course in 2019. What happened was there was a dispute over some land. The leadership at that time did want to purchase the land, but we never closed on that property. So we've never actually owned it.
So the press release that your CEO did at the time saying that you guys had bought a golf course, Oaks Golf, I believe it was, in February 2019 was just fluff.
I don't recall the press release, Mr. Chairman, but we do not own a golf course at this time.
Got you. What properties do you guys own outside of the actual mill property?
The only property we own outside of the mill, or only property we own at all, is the 240 plus acres at the aluminum rolling mill, sir.
Gotcha. Any other questions from this committee at this time? Well, guys, listen, I've said this half a dozen times. We all want to see a successful mill operation in Ashland, Kentucky. But the fact is, this has been one successive list of reasons we couldn't answer questions and excuses through multiple gubernatorial administrations, General Assembly, etc. I will be very direct to you and to the public. I will be filing a bill this year that demands your repayment of these incentives, and I hope that I can enjoy the support of those members on the committee. Representative Nemes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the presentation. I appreciate your questions. I know we mentioned Terry Gill as having an involvement in the company. Are there any other Bevan administration officials that have any role in the company, including investors, as investors or officers or employees?
Representative, hi, this is Nate Haney. Obviously, I was part of the Bevan administration prior to any of this stuff coming up through. But yes, I was a part of the Bevan administration for the first year of his administration, and but I was no longer there prior to Unity or Brady at the time being on. To my knowledge, I have no idea if there are any additional people who are investors. We have a lot of investors who came in also on a net capital portal. So we have a lot of investors. I'm not sure if any of them are former or previous, but no, I would be the only other one that's that had any involvement at all in the Bevan administration.
And Nate, you and I know each other very well, and I trust you. I'd like to ask that same question of everyone else in the room, and then a standing question, if we could get that responded to on behalf of the company officially. But is there anybody else in the room that can answer that question? And then I guess should I submit that question to CEO Gill, or is this enough to request that information from the company to get it from someone who knows and get it official?
Representative, I can try to find out the answer for you, but I will have to talk with Mr. Gill as well as the Kirk Carson, our Senior Vice President of HR. But yes, that is my understanding, and I'd be glad. You don't have to submit a question. You can if you want to. You have my cell phone number and email. But if not, that's fine too. I can try to get the answer to it for you.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Haney, please forgive me if I'm not really up to speed on where this project is at this point. But as far as any physical activity on the site, where is it at this point? Where are you all? Are you in a leased building? Are you at a building on site? Where exactly is the project itself right now?
Senator, that's a good question. No, we are currently in a building that we leased. We've leased this from almost day one, I believe June of 17 or 18. I can't recall exactly, but we are currently in a leased building. We own land at East Park Industrial Center that was owned by the Northeast Industrial Board. And that land's about 240 acres. There are 3 buildings on that land that we purchased during that time as well. One of them is a spec building. It's 100,000 square feet. It has a gravel floor, and it was built in 2003 on that abandoned coal mine. And then one building is used to be the H.T. Hackney Distribution Center. It's about 65,000 square feet building. And then there's another building that used to be a pressure tech building, which is used for maintenance and things of that nature. So we purchased all of that contiguous land. It splits Boyd and Greenup County. And we have had all of our design, engineering, construction plans for that property. There is additional property around that, quite a bit of it, if we need to expand or buy or build additional facilities, etc. We have done some construction on the building. Excuse me, not construction, but groundwork on the building. There has been on the grounds. I mean, there was a abandoned mine land grant that the Northeast Industrial Center received to put in some drainage under that. It's about $5 million, maybe, or $4 million. I don't recall what the grant was, but our construction team was the ones who handled that, and we finished it about a month ahead of schedule and on budget. And it's been a very good project for that property. No matter who ends up being there, we think it's going to be us. We are pretty confident and feeling very optimistic and hopeful right now. And we actually have a video of that, Senator, if you want us to show it. It's 30 seconds, but
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nate, I appreciate you and your team being here today. And as you know, I think everyone in this room wants this project to succeed. We know how vitally important and how much of a lifeline this could be for the Appalachian region. You referenced you did not anticipate having to ask for an extension by March of 22. Assuming that your financing package comes through, what is your estimated date when you could start production at Unity?
That's a great question. Greg, why don't you answer that for Representative Tipton, please?
Sure. We are targeting customer quantity trial coils to be shipped in the second half of 2025.
Okay.
So, Representative, we can produce some test quality coils during that time if we finish our financing now. It's about it's between a 30 and 36 month total construction period, where we'll have approximately 1,200, 1,500 construction workers full time on our facility, and then we will start production a little prior to that. But that'll be that's sort of the timeline. Give you a general idea.
Okay, Mr. Chair, can I have a quick follow up?
Certainly.
I understand that when Brady was originally started, there was some partnerships, some collaboration with Ashland Community College for the purpose of training the students with degrees, credentials that align with the necessary skills that would be necessary in the aluminum plant. Obviously, there's probably students who have already graduated from that program. Do you know what has happened with that collaboration? How many students there are who have graduated and we're anticipating jobs now, and what might be done to accommodate those individuals?
Yeah, Representative, I can speak to that just a little bit. Kirk Carson would be a perfect person to answer that question. He had an issue today that he could not attend, but I can get you a more thorough, detailed response to that. We have had a graduating class there that we went by and supported, and almost every single one of those got tremendous jobs, whether it be at Toyota, whether it be at a rolling mill up in West Virginia, whether it be at Veolia out here at the Riverport. They are, it's a well-rounded education tract. We still have that same partnership with the college. It is a wonderful partnership. They have done a tremendous job out there, and our team is always available to try to help with the students there. And so it's a great program. We have a great partnership with Larry Ferguson, the president there at ACTC, and the team there. ACTC is also representative right across the street from where our mill will be located. And our equipment supplier, SMS, which is one of the greatest global equipment suppliers, they have actually talked about potentially coming in to collaborate and bringing their North American aluminum headquarters there as well. And so we're trying to really create a great corridor for this industrial center.
Very well. So I want to make sure that we have a couple things on the record here. First of all, one of your clauses is that by March 31st of next year, you will have $1 billion for construction and equipping of your mill, and that construction or site development will have commenced. So you're saying that that will be the case?
That is our goal. That is our goal, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, I want to know whether there is or will be, and let's abandon the Rusal specific conversation. Is there or will there be any affiliation or association with either the Russian government, citizens, investors, etc., in your operation?
As far as ownership, no, sir. Rusal is a great aluminum company that supplies the world's lowest carbon aluminum slab, and so we do have to have that for input. So we will have a supply agreement with Rusal, but no, there will be no ownership. There will be no other collaboration with the Russian government or anyone from that country.
And so will there be any financial obligations of any type to or from a Russian company or individual or collaborative?
Bernardo, you want to touch on that as what you can touch on it? I'm not sure, Your Honor. Your Honor, I'll turn that over to.
Yeah, the only obligation that we're going to be having, Mr. Chairman, with Rusal is just what has been defined in the commercial agreement with them. They're going to be supplying finite volume of 60,000 metric tons of rolling slab per year, starting the first year of production. But other than the very common commercial terms that have been signed between Unity Aluminum and Rusal America, which is a separate entity, the American office of Rusal, there is no obligation with anything related to the Russian government or any kind of Russian organization.
Thank you. Representative Nemes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did want to say a few things real quickly, and that is reiterate that everyone in here, I think everyone in Kentucky, wants this project to be successful. We have a bunch of legitimate concerns. The chairman has expressed those. I think everyone in here is in agreement with him. I certainly am. Most of those have to do with previous administrators or managers in the company. although it seems like the kinds of can't answer questions and lack of information persist, we need that to change. I know Terry Gill, the new CEO. I did not know he was the CEO, but perhaps I should have. I think he's extremely capable. I hope that you guys can turn this around. I know you said earlier, Nathan, that investors want to know that Kentucky's on board. Well, we're on board to the extent that we start getting information and we start hitting benchmarks. I'm hopeful that we can build a relationship of trust again. I want to get the taxpayers' money back. But there are a lot of red flags that continue to today, even though the people sitting at that table that I know and Mr. Gill are highly capable. We're going to need to continue to dig in here. I'm hoping we meet the benchmarks. I believe it seems like you got a good team around you, but I hope you understand the significant concerns that we have. If you're in the position of the Kentucky taxpayer, I think the chairman said it perfectly. We feel like we've been played or been had. I don't know how he put it. And we've got to change that relationship. And the first step forward is that you guys need to start providing, I think, more information to us. Unfortunately, we're your partner in some ways because you have $15 million of taxpayer funds that we regret giving. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just real quickly, should the financing fall apart prior to March of next year, does the company have a date certain to walk away from this project? Are there contingency plans? How long is the company willing to pursue this endeavor without the financing coming together?
Senator, our team here is focused, has changed our focus really to be very direct on getting the financing for the mill. We had been a little bit all over the place in the past, and new leadership has changed some of that, and we really are on a straight path towards that for success. Our team here certainly is not knowledgeable on what happens if we don't receive the financing. We're focused on receiving the financing, but there are, I'm sure, contingencies and things that we would go through in a normal course of business. I can tell you, as far as I'm concerned, every minute I've spent and every minute these people that are with me have spent on this project is worth it and will be worth it. The people of East Kentucky are worth it, and the people of Kentucky are worth it. And there's nothing more proud that I have ever been a part of than to try to get this project done. It has not been easy. There are no guarantees. And many of the folks in this room, I know almost all of you, have started or have been a part of business, and you know how difficult it is. And this one's been particularly difficult. And I understand very much so and empathize with Representative Nemus and Chairman McDaniel and the folks on the committee with some of the concerns that you have. And I plan and I'll pledge that I'll take the lead on trying to rebuild trust with the legislature. I am in a good position to do so, and I appreciate all of you and your support and what you do for the state of Kentucky as well. So we'll put that on the top of our agenda.
Yeah. And from our perspective, it's got to be gut wrenching for the people at that part of our state. The football is there, and then the football's pulled away, and then it's there, and then it's pulled away, and it's the future of the following generations that are at stake. And I agree, everyone certainly wants this to succeed, but it has been frustrating. And watching this from a distance, I just can't imagine what the people are going through there. But I do feel comfortable that you all are taking this personally. But I also know in the corporate world, a lot of that's out of your control, and we need this to succeed in our Commonwealth, and we need something to happen soon on this for our people. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Hatton.
Hi, I just wanted to speak as both a legislator who voted to provide this funding for Brady, but also as an Eastern Kentuckian, that we have a history of having outsiders come in and say they're going to save us. And I appreciate that you've moved to the community. I hope that helps you to understand how much this means to us, and how very happy we were to hear that there was going to be this investment and these jobs in Eastern Kentucky, and that we're still hoping and relying on you to come through on some of these promises, and that they are very personal to people in Eastern Kentucky who often feel that we don't get the attention that we need to survive, especially as the downturn in the coal industry has taken so many more of us and caused us to have to move away and our population to decline so mightily. I'm happy to hear the project is still at least trying to get off the ground, and just wanted to appeal to you as an Eastern Kentuckian, but also as someone who voted for this funding, that we desperately need it and hope that it's coming together.
Representative, thank you for those encouraging comments. I'm a graduate of Paintsville High School. My family grew up in East Kentucky. This project means so much to me. I'm on the SOAR board, and I'm the chair of the finances SOAR board. I take this project very, very personally. I can tell you, I have a trucking company. I've got multiple companies that I could be spending my time on, but I am 1,000% committed here. We have had difficult times, but we wanted to make sure when Chairman McDaniel asked us to come that we showed up, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to provide as much information as we could, with the exception of what our attorneys have told us we're not allowed to say because of SEC rules and regulations, or because we've signed a confidentiality agreement, which unfortunately and fortunately is part of business these days. And so I want you to know, Representative, I appreciate it. Our team appreciates the encouragement. And, I always say, being from East Kentucky, that being underestimated is our biggest blessing in disguise. And I can tell you, we're going to work our tails off to get this project done.
Last word goes to Co-Chair Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank y'all for presenting today, coming and attempting to answer some questions. I hope you get back to us with the information that's been requested, but I want to make sure that the House side of A&R has not been silent on the issue today. I've spoken with Chairman McDaniel about this. He and I view this issue very similarly, almost identically. And as one of those people who came in 2017 session and voted for this, it's one of those votes that still hangs around in the back of my mind. But I'm not going to go rehash that, but I will hash this. Since arriving and since coming on to A&R, I have continued to talk about ROI, return on investment, hard and soft. Talked about it in a budget review sub this morning relative to education. When I look for ROI on the $15 million worth of Kentucky taxpayer money that was put in 17, I see nothing. My bandwidth, my landing strip, my capacity for let's hope and pray further has come to almost complete stop. Like Representative Hatton and like everybody else here, want the project to work. But at some point in time, you end up with a negative ROI and someone has to cut losses. I hope we're not at that point, but that's my analysis. That's my method of thinking. I want to make sure you're aware of it. We have reached a critical time for decision. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Petrie. With that, time comes to conclusion here. Those from Unity, thank you for joining us today. I'm sure that we will be speaking more in the future. All right, next up, we have Kentucky State University.
Good afternoon. My name is Greg Rush. I'm the Vice President for Finance Administration at Kentucky State.
Greg, pull that mic a little closer, please.
I'm Greg Rush. I'm the Vice President for Finance Administration at Kentucky State University.
Before Greg gets going here, I do just want to make one quick comment. We threw a slip up that I will take the blame for entirely. They were not on the agenda until very, very late. As like today, that is no one's fault but mine. I appreciate them being with us and responding in a timely manner like this. Mercifully, they were supposed to be on the other week. when we got pulled into a special session, so they already had a slideshow. So both to the membership and to K-State, I apologize for the late notice. But to you, Greg, thank you for making it work.
We appreciate that, Chairman McDaniel and Chairman Petrie. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you this afternoon. President Stamps was with us for a little while, but she is currently in Indianapolis and has some commitments there contractually with some meetings and had to drop off. So on behalf of her, again, I appreciate the opportunity, and we'll go ahead and get started. As some of you all know, this is my second tenure as CFO for Kentucky State University. I was also there from 2015 through 2017 under Presidents Raymond Burse and Aaron Thompson. Did not expect to be back, but I am back. To give you some background, in July of this year, university staff alerted the Board of Regents regarding financial concerns at the university and a concern about $15 million, and essentially a shortfall of $15 million. And I'll get more into what that's comprised of here in a couple of minutes. The board informed the Council on Post-Secondary Education and the Governor's Office. The board's review of that issue and discussions led to a leadership transition on July 20th. At that point, Clara Ross Stamps was named acting president, and I was named chief financial officer and vice president. Our focus it's been a busy 2 months, I'll tell you. Our focus has been on getting the campus ready and getting our students back on campus face-to-face for the first time since COVID. We worked on rebuilding trust and having a lot of conversations around campus, and our commitment has been to transparency, and we've been as transparent as we can be with our board. I've been as transparent as I can be with the faculty, and we will be with you as well. We have some culture concerns on campus, which we're working through, and it's part of it is just changing the campus culture to kind of focus on the work that we need to do for our students. We have had some employee separations as the year began, and as we are restructuring the campus. Initially, that totaled about $700,000 in staff savings, and we've since then added a little bit to that. We have suspended purchasing, hiring. We have a hiring freeze and travel restrictions. Obviously, there are some things we have to do to run a campus, and our commitment has been that our students not suffer through this. So our purchases have been focused on our students and things our students have to do. We are finding that there was misalignment of personnel, and so some areas were critically understaffed. For example, housekeeping. You may have noticed some issues in the paper when students moved in about our dorms not being ready, and so we've moved to address shortages in staffing in those areas, including security and housing and the things that are most important to keep our students safe. I will kind of jump ahead to the financial situation on campus. I officially became CFO July 26th. Dr. Thompson was kind enough to let me go ahead and spend most of the week of July 20th on campus. For those of you that don't know, for the last 2 years, I was employed as a senior fellow with the Council on Post-Secondary Education. And prior to that was with KSU as an assistant to President Brown. And when I got there on the week of the 20th, we had about $2.8 million of cash and accessible state appropriation. To give you some context, the state appropriation for the first quarter the allotment for the first quarter for Kentucky State is around $8.6 million. When I got there on the 20th, there was about $2.8 million left and essentially no other cash that was accessible. And we'll talk in a minute about how we got there. We had payroll coming due a week later, approximately $2.5 million. We owed $4 million to vendors. About $1.8 million of that was over 4 months old. So we had a pretty significant situation in that first third week in July. We worked with the council and with the state budget office to advance our fourth quarter allotment, which is about $5.4 million. They gave us access to that so we could go ahead and make payroll and begin paying our vendors and get our cash position sorted on the campus. And to be honest, my first 2 months have mostly been focused on the things that we needed to do to get, and President Stamps as well. We've been focused on the things that had to be done to get the semester started, to serve our students, to get faculty in classrooms, and to stabilize the cash position of the university where it wasn't a constant scramble each week to try to identify funds for the next payroll. And we are past that right now. To be honest, we will be there again, and we will be there in the spring, because what we did right now to get through was advancing money from the fourth quarter, and that is only a temporary solution. Kind of how we got here. Well, again, we had about $2.8 million in cash, as I mentioned. We also had a number of issues that cause a serious financial situation in this year. And these are essentially commitments and expenses that have accumulated over the last 3 or 4 years that weren't paid and therefore have rolled into this current fiscal year. Back in 2019, in the spring, well, let me back up a little bit. The Finance Administration Cabinet manages construction projects for Kentucky State University. We're not large enough to have engineers and architects and project managers in place, so we rely on Finance Administration, Division of Engineering and Construction Administration to handle our projects. And that's regardless of fund source, whether it's university funds, whether it would be a general fund, supported bond, agency bond, or federal funds. And when the projects are funded with federal funds, we typically have an arrangement where the state will pay those bills and forward us the invoices. They're legitimate claims against the project. We pull down the federal funds and then remit those funds to the state. Beginning in sometime in early 19, I believe it was January, but I don't have the date right in front of me, the university stopped forwarding the funds back to the state. And so as projects completed and as things moved forward, the deficit with the state kept growing and got to a point of approximately $5.2 million. I'd mentioned before we had about $4.3 million in old year invoices that carried forward into fiscal 22. There is an asset preservation fee that had been approved by the Council on Post-Secondary Education. It's charged to every student. It's about $300 a year, and those proceeds can only be used to support asset preservation projects on the campus. And those projects would have to be approved by the council. If they're large enough, they would come to capital projects and bond oversight. That money has to be reserved in a separate account, can't be spent for anything else. And over the 19 through 21, those funds were not reserved and just were in the general university budget. So those funds will have to be replenished and put back in a fund for their appropriate purpose. Also, beginning in 19, the university began a process where they were utilizing a revenue anticipation note. And that's a common funding source. When I was finance director of a school district years ago, they were a tax revenue anticipation note, and it's a working capital loan where you borrow against your revenues that you will expect to receive later in the year. And those notes are typically closed within that fiscal year. The idea is you're short on money in July. If you're a school district, you get your tax revenues in November. If you're a university, you get your tuition revenue in September. So you have a short-term borrowing until your revenues come in. The university's been carrying about a $5 million note now for a couple of years, and it's not been being cleared by June 30. And so that note carried forward into the current fiscal year. And essentially the payment on that note and a couple of debt service invoices took most of the general fund allotment for the first quarter. So if you add all that together, we're at about a little under $16 million of prior year expenses that have flowed into this fiscal year for a number of reasons. And very low cash level. To give you some context, when I left as CFO in 2017, the university had about $22 million in cash and in reserves.
Greg, I'm going to interrupt you just briefly.
Yes, sir.
Is Dr. Thompson on with us right now?
He was going to be.
I am indeed, sir.
Okay, very well. And here's why I say this. I want to give him a couple of minutes to be able to comment on the executive order. I need to leave time for the committee to answer, and I'm under a deadline to have us out of here in the next about 18 minutes. So if you could maybe give us a couple more minutes here, let me go to Dr. Thompson so I can then go to the committee for some questions, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me move through this more quickly. The one thing I do want to point out on here, these slides are about 2 weeks old, and at that point we had focused on kind of stabilizing the university, and now we have moved to projecting the remainder of this fiscal year and looking at the structural imbalance that's built in the university budget right now. And when I had originally put these together, we had hoped we'd be able to manage the budget so the current year operations didn't add to the shortfall. That was optimistic, and I'm going to be very honest with you. We're going to have a shortfall in this current year as well. We're still working through that number. We're working with CP to verify that number. We hope to be able to get there next week, share with our board, and then we will share with you as soon as we have that. But I do want to point out that the current year is going to be a challenge as well. You want me to go ahead and move through these? Yeah, I'll go. Let me do a couple things. The question we get often is, how did we get here? And from my review, and we're not complete with this, and we're also reviewing this with CPE, there were a lot of things done, a lot of initiatives, a lot of student services programs. I've not found any evidence to this point of any money that has been used for any non-university purpose. I used to work for a superintendent who had a saying, we can do anything you want, we can't do everything you want. And I think for the last 3 years, we've done everything we wanted. And you may remember, Chairman, that back in 2016, we had a proposal. It's about $3 or $4 million for a series of actions to improve student success. They were enhanced advising, enhanced faculty recruitment, a whole host of strategies. A lot of those strategies were implemented, and they were successful, but they didn't have the money to do them. And, you know, our graduation rate's now at 37.65%. When I left, it was in the low 20s. Our retention rate last year was 78%. This year is 70%. When I left, it was in the 50s. So there have been some significant, and our enrollment is right now about 2,290 students. When I left the first time in 17, it was moving up, but it was about 1,800 or 1,900. So we've had some significant successes, but the money was not there to do the initiatives to do these projects. And even had we done those initiatives, the shortfall is larger than it would have been. So a lot of other things were done. What are we doing to kind of work on this? We're working very closely with CPE. In fact, they verify everything I say to our Board of Regents. I think that's important because I don't believe our board feels like they've gotten accurate information over the past years. And we're now providing a new set of reports for them. We'll go through cash position every meeting, aging schedule of payables. We'll go through our student accounts receivable. We provided them personnel actions. We're working on an updated year-to-date budget report that is accurate for them, and then any other reports that are recommended by the council will be part of that. I'll run through the new residence hall quite quickly because I know there's been a lot of questions about that. It's a public-private partnership. It was approved in the April meeting of Capital Projects and Bond Oversight. The developer is CRM, and it is this project is structured almost identically to the building on Sauer Boulevard and the Mayo Underwood building in downtown Frankfort. Construction's underway. It's on track to be completed in January 2023. Financing was sold on July 27th. All-in interest costs of about 3.11%. The sale was not rated by Moody's, partly because they did not feel the state intercept provision applied to a P3 project. So the university executed a memorandum of agreement with the Finance Administration Cabinet to try to replicate that intercept provision, and that allowed the sale to proceed. Our first lease payment will be due in March of 24. It's about $3.8 million. Our projected semester rates are approximately $4,600 per bed. That's in the ballpark with the new residence halls at University of Kentucky and I think at University of Louisville. It's high for us. I'm going to be perfectly honest. That's a high housing rate for us, and we'll work with our students to make that work. I'm probably left a few things out, Chairman, but if there's anything you want me to cover, I'll be glad to.
Very well. Dr. Thompson, would you like to comment on the executive order briefly, sir?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Good to see you and the committee. Happy to be here. I'll make a long story short because the executive order gives us some substantial powers that in the past CPE hasn't had. And I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you, but I was in another meeting. So I'm on my iPad. So if you can't see me well, I'll apologize for that too. Or if you're looking at my nose, I'll apologize for that. But basically what the executive order did was it didn't supersede the board. It still has the fiduciary powers of the campus, but it gave us some equal powers to look at all the finances, look at the structure of the campus, look at the culture of the campus. They have to report to us information that in the past we didn't have access to, especially around the finances, and that's what we're doing. We hired Susan Krause, former treasurer at University of Kentucky, to act as a third party in looking at the finances. So everything Greg is putting out, we're looking at it in great detail. Not that we don't trust Greg, we obviously do, the reason why we sent him over, but we want to make sure that what we're getting is what we're getting. I've also now interviewed most of the campus, looking at, trying to understand the dynamics of the culture. What we know is that we're going to have to really embed a way of thinking about increasing the sustainability of the campus through a variety of things. Better cultural milieu, better organizational stability. So we're kind of conducting the lead on finding a new president, looking at the way that it's organized now as far as the academic structure, administrative structure, and other structures. We're going to be proposing also to the General Assembly and to the Board of Regents at KSU a new way of thinking about how they can become centers of excellence in certain areas to foster what I consider to be some of the things that they've had the opportunity in the past to do and hadn't done. Some of the things you heard me talk about in 2016 and 17, I know. But what we're doing in great detail now is making sure that the campus is organizationally stable, that finances get back to square one, where we will report to you the correct numbers. As Greg can tell you, I'm going to be as transparent as I possibly can with everybody about this, especially you folk. But I have Travis Powell, who's our general counsel and vice president, who's taken a lead with me in working here. And we'll be hiring a few consultants to help us to build out some of the academic structures that we feel that should be in place for a 21st century HBCU and all practicality, 21st century campus. And so once again, there's a lot to this. I know that there's a lot of questions you have. I won't spend a long time on this. I'll just, if you have particular questions, I'm happy to answer them all with Greg. But just know that CPE, with the executive order, has been given some powers we don't have normally to make sure that we do not repeat any of these things that need not to be repeatable.
Very well. All right. Senator Thomas had asked to have a comment or question first, so go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Daniel, and I really appreciate you allowing me to ask questions, even though I'm not a member of A&R. But I have a huge constituency that is very interested in Kentucky State University, and so I have two pointed questions for you, Greg. Aaron, I have one pointed question for you, then I have a comment. First of all, Greg, and this is what several people want to know: is Kentucky State University going to be able to pay its bills for the remainder of this school year? Or are you going to need emergency funding from the state? That's number one. And then number two, are all the students on the university now are paying students? No, we don't have students that are not just there with promissory notes, but are they able to pay their bills that are enrolled in the campus right now? I want you to answer those two questions for me.
Yes, Senator, those are both very good questions. We have been doing cash flow projections. That was one of the first things we started off with. We are able now, we're confident to make it through January. We believe we can make it through April. But at this point, even with accessing the revenue anticipation note, we would not have enough cash without assistance to operate past April. As for your second question, I think that's been an issue. I'll be perfectly honest. I think part of the issue over the past 3 years, or 4 years, is we have not had a full student body that has satisfied their balances. Part of the reason our enrollment declined just a bit this year is we began enforcing that this fall. To be honest, by the time President Stamps was named and I got there, it was a little too late to really enforce that the way we would like to. We are currently working with students, and we actually are starting that next week to work on next semester to make sure that students have sufficient warning and sufficient time to clear their balances before they register for classes in the spring. And we have put the word out that you will not be staying in the residence halls over the winter break unless you've cleared what you owe the university, or we have a path for you. Now, the promissory notes, that if they're making payments and we have payment plans, we'll work through that with students, because as you know, a lot of our students are low income and have a lot of challenges, and we want to do everything we can to support them and work with them. But every student has to have a financial path.
And then Dr. Thompson, one question to you and then a comment. Has a schedule been set for the a selection or selection of a new president? I mean, have they, in other words, have they started sending out an announcement? Has there a deadline for when announcements close? When we will have semifinalists and then finalists and then selection of a president. Has a schedule been set out to select a new president? And then my comment, which you'll hear me again, as I've said to you before, and I'll say this over and over again, I think Kentucky State University has to make it a priority to bring in Kentucky students. We've got to have, we are a Kentucky State University, and our student body has to be reflective of this state, because the money we pay to have Kentucky State University in existence is Kentucky money. So if you can answer my first question, please, and then if you want to comment on my comment, feel free to do so.
Well, thank you, Senator Thomas. Good to see you. A couple of things. First of all, under the executive order, we have to provide a management and improvement plan to come back to the governor and to actually be presented to you all before we ask you for anything. And so we'll do that. And a part of that will be to ask for, some strategic investment in the programs. I wanted to say that first of all. Secondarily, yes, we will send out a schedule soon, but we are in the process now of selecting a search firm that's led by Travis. We are putting together a search committee. This search committee is going to be led by CPE. To be honest with you, we feel like we want to make sure it's fair. We will meet with the board in a special call meeting. I asked the board chair and the board to call a special call meeting October 19th for them to approve the timelines, the search consultant, for them to approve the search committee, and so on. So we want to do this immediately. My goal, Senator Thomas, is to have us a set of viable candidates. Once again, we'll present it to the board. They still have the fiduciary power, but we will be there with them and we'll present to them final candidates, hopefully sometimes at least by the 1st of April, whereby we can have somebody on board as soon as we possibly can. Now, on the Kentucky students, you already know my answer to this. When I was there as interim president, we increased our Kentucky student population because I felt there was a need to do that. We even built pipelines from Eastern Kentucky to make some of that happen. We've got to do that again. I mean, if we don't do that, I think we're failing Kentucky. Now, that doesn't mean we don't use out-of-state students or bring in out-of-state students to help us to fill out those things that we need. Thus, we're not going to exclude, but we need to really work harder to build that pipeline from our great Kentucky schools into this great university. So yes, no doubt about it. And we're going to be looking at enrollment management processes, student success processes, and other structures, Senator Thomas, to ensure that those will be a part of the process.
Thank you. Okay, so in the interest of time and knowing we've got Representative Tipton to get to as well, mine will be more a form of a statement than a question, guys. But understand this. So the paper from this past weekend continued to unfold more and more things. And both to you, Dr. Thompson, and to Greg, I understand these are pre-administration things, but you're here as the representative, so you're the ones that get to hear it. I'm not going to ask about Regent Felder, who was subsequently dismissed from KSU, but I will say that I have concerns about that. I have concerns about the things I've read about the lack of transparency regarding the faculty senate meeting and the things that were and weren't allowed to be said from there. That being said, my overarching concern is a pattern I've seen in my limited time in the General Assembly, which started with the previous Governor Beshear's budget that cut all the universities except K-State, and then we increased K-State's budget. We still can't put K-State in the outcomes-based funding because of the results that would impact on their budget, because they're not producing enough. And so as I look at this and look roughly and crudely at the cost per degree, in fiscal year 17, we spent $26.7 million of appropriation for 401 degrees at a cost of $66,000 apiece. Fiscal year 19, we were at 205 degrees, $25.2 million for a cost of $123,000 per diploma that was coming out of K-State. And so the financial case to be made is that there should not be a Kentucky State, that we should give these kids full tuition, send them to the University of Kentucky, send them to the University of Louisville, but there are larger cultural implications at play as well. But the lowest common denominator is the customer, the student, and are they being served? And if I was a parent sitting here listening to, we think we can make it through January, we think we can make it through April, I can tell you where my kid would not be in January. And so we have an obligation, and once again, I say these things not casting stones at you. I wish we could have the previous administration here, and I will say I am bothered that the CFO, who didn't present some very basic facts, is now the CFO at Tennessee State University. So good luck, Tennessee. I'd suggest recruiting out of Nashville, Dr. Thompson. That might work. Nonetheless, you're going to come to us for supplementary finance requests.
That's correct, Chairman.
I want an operational request as well. And if that means suspending, hiring statutes, tenure statutes, I don't care what it is. The whole team's got to be on board because these kids aren't being served properly. You've done it once before, and President Burris and Dr. Thompson, to the extent you were there. And unfortunately, I think if you had been there the last 4 years, we would not be having this conversation, but we cannot go backwards. But everybody's got to get on board. And if we need to suspend tenure, like I say, we need to suspend employment statutes, let us help. Because this is not going to be an insignificant request that you come with, and we've got to start serving these kids better. Representative Tipton, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try and be brief. Chairman McDaniel, I think, laid it out very well, the situation that we're in. We've got an institution that is with financial difficulties. We understand the significance of the HBCU status of the university. It's also a land-grant university, which is very significant to our Commonwealth. Greg, you and I have had multiple conversations. I was actually planning on calling you this afternoon, so I'm glad you're here. Is there currently an financial audit in place, and could you describe the scope of that audit, the depth of that audit, and when we might be able to have the results of that audit?
We're a couple of different things going on there. We currently have not begun the fiscal year 21 audit. We are working with Crowe and Horwath, who've done the audit for the last couple of years. Part of it is we had the CFO and the controller and the budget manager all leave between May and July of this year. So we have a team to put back in place, and our auditor has asked that we have our team in place before we begin the audit, because there are a lot of things that we need to do to close the books on last year before it makes sense for them to come in. And we have actually, my new controller started Tuesday of this week. My new budget director started about a month ago. So we have some learning and some catching up to do. And I have been there before, but there's only so much you can do. And we are working as hard as we can to get that ready. Our current plan is to be able to pull financial statements for last year by November. That's when Mr. Ross, the controller, needs preliminary numbers for the state's financial statement. We've been in contact with Mr. Ross, and that we would then begin our audit in December with a goal of finishing it in March. The council, as you know, and Ms. Krause is really amazing, to be perfectly honest. She's been incredibly helpful. She has a wealth of experience in a lot of these areas. She's working with our internal auditor to, like we said before, verify everything I say, basically, and also to review what's happened over the last 2 or 3 years. We also are responding to requests from the state auditor's office, and we've been working and providing them any information that they've asked for. They're reviewing transactions from fiscal year 20 and 21, and we are in communication with them as well. So that's the timeline as we see it right now, Representative Tipton. And if we slide in that in any way for any reason, we'll make sure and let you know. But I'm optimistic that we can hit those targets, because we need to get 21 resolved, because we have a lot of work to do in 22.
If I could continue, Mr. Chairman, a quick question. I know you're building new residence halls.
Mm-hmm.
I know the dire need the university has for that. Could you share with the committee how many students are currently living off campus in hotels, and what is the cost of that to the university per year?
The cost numbers catch me a little bit because I want to get it right. We currently have about 180 students living in the Capitol Plaza Hotel and in the Best Western. They were gracious enough to work with us. We actually had to turn students away this year. That's the first time in a long time that we've not been able to accommodate students, but we could not, with the other commitments that the hotels had, we could not rent enough rooms for the period that we have to have them to make that work. The cost is approximately I want to do a range because I can't remember off the top of my head. We're about $600,000 to $800,000 a year with the current number of students we had. We had a lot. We were up about $2 million last year because we rented about twice as much space as we have this year, because we were going with single rooms due to COVID, and we needed extra space. I think at this year, if we had not had to turn people away, we probably would have had another 100 to 150 students. So right now, the residence hall is desperately needed, because it's not a good environment to send. And none of us would really want our kids to go to college and be living in a hotel and having to ride a shuttle to campus, and those kind of things are not ideal for our students or for their families. So that is something that we hope will quickly be alleviated. It will also give us some necessary ability to renovate our existing residence halls and try to begin structuring our budget in such a way that we're using part of our housing revenues to replenish our stock, which is how it should work.
So, Greg, I'm going to ask you to stop there, only because in the interests of time, and I'm going to somewhat put my co-chair on the spot, and because we've got Representative Beckler, and then I was going to go to him for comment, that if there's other things that people really feel like need to be flushed out in one of these meetings, I'm sure we can get you back in the near future to do that. So, Representative Beckler, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm astounded at what appears to me to be the total lack of oversight that took place to get in the current financial situation you're in. I'm pleased to hear that nothing nefarious has been found so far. Very pleased about that. But I want to know what took so long to realize there was the shortfall and the magnitude of it, And specifically, what is being done to see that something like this never happens again?
Those are very good questions, Representative Beckler. I've not been able to review all the minutes and all the materials that were presented to the board over the last few years, but what I have seen is not reflective of the financial position of the university. We're getting ready to produce, hopefully within the next week or so, what we see the budget to actual for each of those years, and we'll be able to compare that to what the board received. And a board is dependent to a large degree on what the information they receive from the staff of the university and the president. And I don't believe that our board is confident that they received the information that they needed to evaluate the financial position of the university or to make decisions related to the university. What we're doing to deal with that going forward, the first step has been this partnership with CPE and the fact that anything that I say to the board is verified by an external third party. And they have access to bank statements, they have access to any of the records, invoices, anything that we have, we've made them available and will continue to make those available. The issue that we have to resolve, and this is something that Dr. Thompson may be asking you for help on, is what additional authority that the council may need to go in and examine records and review information to make sure they can validate what they're being told by the leadership of any university. And we have to determine at Kentucky State University how we continue this verification where the board is certain that the information they're receiving is accurate after this depending on where this relationship with CP goes after the executive order expires.
Well, gentlemen, thank you both very much for your time today. We do appreciate you. To the members of this committee, if you feel so compelled, I'm certainly happy to have these guys back in November, maybe the co-chair even in October as necessary. So thank you guys very much for your time today. I do appreciate it. Before a couple last final words here, there is some correspondence in the electronic packets that were distributed from Jenny Bannister, so take a look at those. There are reports that we've received since August of 2021. So take a look at those. And then finally, for the last word, we will go to Co-Chair Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Completely unrelated to any topic we've addressed today, but I want to update the committee members and the public about two issues that have had interest among citizens of the Commonwealth as well as members that have all contacted me over the last 2 or 3 months. Two issues that popped up this last session, and I would anticipate that they come up again, is pay scale adjustments for state employees, as well as recruitment and retention issues for KSP. We all understand that there's serious issues on both of those fronts, and I just want to update the committee about two things that have been requested which have not been forthcoming. On Wednesday, June the 2nd at 9 a.m., Representative Fisher chaired the meeting of the Interim Budget Review Subcommittee on Justice and Judiciary, at which there appeared two members, the Commissioner of Kentucky State Police and Lieutenant Colonel Nall. And we talked about recruitment and retention issues. I specifically asked if we could receive from them, from the agency, a plan of how to deal with those recruitment retention issues, specifically regarding pay scale and other issues. Everyone agreed on the record to provide that to me by September the 1st. On Wednesday, July the 7th at 9 a.m., Representative Dawson chaired the meeting of the Interim Budget Review Subcommittee on General Government, Finance, Personnel, and Public Retirement, at which there appeared Secretary Weathers, Personnel Cabinet, and Commissioner of Human Resource Administration, Personnel Cabinet, Mary Bailey. During that committee, there was discussion about pay scale adjustments and whether a 1 or 2% broad-based raise was appropriate. I think it was generally considered inappropriate. It would not address the underlying substantive issues regarding pay scales for state government employees. Won't get into the details of it. However, during the meeting, I asked on the record if we could have a plan presented to me, if they could get a plan to me about how to make adjustments to address the underlying issues. That was to be provided to me by September 1. And with the KSP, we've actually sent some staff members over to assist and interact. with the personnel cabinet. I spoke with the secretary and the commissioner out in the hallway after that meeting and made sure I made myself available as well as any other resources that they might want. Made sure everybody was clear in both agencies that we needed that report by September 1, those reports, recommendations, and this is why. January starts our budget cycle, and there's a lot that goes on. You don't want to be tackling new issues and important issues and deep issues during a budget session. December, we all have a lot of meetings scheduled that are already scheduled in advance, plus you've got holidays that you run through. That's not only for ourselves, but all the staff members that assist us and we need in order to have that assistance. You go back into November, we've got another holiday season. We also have some other events that are scheduled for them. So that would essentially give us, if September 1, those reports are developed and provided to us, it gives us September and at least October to work back and forth with the agencies and make sure we understand the issues, understand their recommendations, and can take appropriate measures come January. Now, to my chagrin, I must inform everybody in this committee and to the public that I have received neither of those reports. Now, I don't know if the issue of pay scale adjustment for government employees is not a priority issue, or recruitment and retention as KSP is not a priority issue, or there's some other kind of hiccup. I do not know whether the report, if a recommendation and report has been generated by either agency, or whether either one is just undergoing an administration review. I don't know the status because I've not been informed. However, public record, I'll say, these have been requested. September 1 was a date. There's a reason for that date. Everyone agreed to it. There were important issues. I have not received those reports yet, nor have I received a status update. So I wanted to get that information back out to the committee, out to the members, and out to the public. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you, Co-Chair Petrie. And all members and administration staff, please take note. Seeing no other business come before this committee, we'll stand adjourned.